Every so often in the tech world, a story comes along that feels, well, it feels epic, like a classic tale of a dominant kingdom with an undisputed ruler suddenly getting shaken right to its foundations. Today, we are diving headfirst into one of those stories, a massive battle for a throne that powers, and I mean this literally, nearly every modern data center on the entire planet. So, what's this kingdom even built on? Well, it's a technology called virtualization. It's basically the magic trick that lets one really powerful computer pretend to be a whole bunch of smaller, separate computers. This one idea completely revolutionized IT. It became the bedrock of modern computing, making everything from your bank servers to the cloud itself way more efficient and flexible. And this kingdom? Oh, it's valuable. The server virtualization market is worth an estimated $9.7 billion. So when we talk about a battle for this throne, we're not just talking about tech. We're talking about a huge shift in how billions of dollars get spent and how millions of businesses run their operations. The stakes really couldn't be any higher. So, to really get how this kingdom is being turned completely upside down, we're going to walk through this story in 5 parts. First, we're going to meet the undisputed king. Then we'll watch as an earthquake shakes the entire realm. We'll see the challengers rise up from the chaos. We'll even peek into the future and ask, is a dethroning actually possible? And finally, we'll zoom out and talk about why this tech battle matters to, well, pretty much everyone. All right, our story begins, as all good ones do, with the king, the long-reigning and what seemed to be untouchable monarch of the virtualization world, VMware. For decades, if you were a serious business running a data center, you were running VMware. End of story. And this chart, wow, it just shows you the sheer scale of their power. Before all this recent drama, VMware was capturing a staggering 97% of all the money spent on virtualization software. I mean, that's not just market dominance, that's practically a monopoly on the kingdom's treasury. But here's the thing, revenue doesn't tell the whole story. If you look at deployment, how many computers were actually running each system, the picture gets a little more interesting. VMware was still the clear leader, no doubt, but other players like Microsoft Hyper-V had already staked out some pretty significant territory. This was maybe the first small hint that the king's rule wasn't quite as absolute as the money made it seem. A stable kingdom can reign for centuries, but this one was about to be hit by a seismic event that changed absolutely everything. The acquisition of VMware by the semiconductor giant Broadcom. And this wasn't just a merger, it was a full-blown earthquake. The first tremors started back in May 2022 with the announcement, and for more than a year, the entire market just held its breath. Then, in late 2023, the deal finally closed. And in early 2024, bam, the full force of the earthquake hit. Broadcom immediately started ripping up VMware's entire business model, radically changing the pricing and licensing for all of its customers. And how did the kingdom's subjects react? Well, they panicked. According to the research firm Gartner, inquiries from VMware customers looking for an escape route for any alternative shot up by 275%. This wasn't just quiet grumbling. This was a loud, frantic search for the exits. And that panic? It wasn't just talk. It had immediate, real-world consequences. By late 2023, before the changes were even finalized, a full 50% of VMware's mid-sized customers were already hitting pause on their renewals. They were voting with their wallets, and it was a clear signal that a potential mass exodus was coming. All of a sudden, the king looked very, very vulnerable. You know what happens in any kingdom when the ruler starts to look weak, right? The challengers emerge from the shadows. They can smell a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And in the wake of the Broadcom earthquake, several rivals began their ascent, all vying for that now unstable throne. The most obvious challenger is Microsoft's Hyper-V. It's been the number 2 for ages, so it naturally became the safe harbor for companies desperate to get away from VMware's new pricing. And because it's already bundled for free with Windows Server, for any business already in the Microsoft ecosystem, it was the easiest, most logical move to make. Then you've got the upstart, Nutanix. Their platform, AHV, came from this newer idea called hyper-converged infrastructure, or HCI. It basically bundles all the complicated computing, storage, and networking stuff into one simple box. And they saw their chance, aggressively going after VMware customers and promising a modern, simpler alternative that could save them a ton of money. And beyond those main contenders, you've got these other factions in the kingdom. Interestingly, Red Hat is kind of bowing out of this particular fight to focus on the next big thing, containers.
Citrix and Oracle, they're still around, but they're niche players happy in their own little corners. And then there's this rising force of open source tools like Proxmox, which are getting super popular with smaller businesses and tech labs that are just fed up with paying for expensive licenses. Okay, so we've got a shaken king, a whole host of rising challengers, which leads to the ultimate question, could the throne actually change hands? Let's take a look at what the analysts are forecasting for the year 2027.
And folks, this chart right here, this is the bombshell. For the first time in modern IT history, the projections show that VMware could actually be unseated as the market leader by deployment. By 2027, Microsoft's Hyper-V is forecast to surpass VMware's market share. Yeah, it's a thin margin, but a lead is a lead. This would be a monumental shift in the balance of power.
So here's how the new kingdom is projected to be divided up. VMware is expected to shrink down to about a 35% share. And that's actually part of Broadcom's strategy. They want to make more money from fewer, bigger customers. Microsoft Hyper-V rises to become the potential new king. Nutanix carves out a solid spot as a strong number 3. And the open source folks? They're set to double their share, snapping up all the users who are most sensitive to cost.
So you might be thinking, okay, why should I care about some corporate power struggle over a hypervisor? And that's a fair question. But this isn't just about one company versus another. It's about the entire evolution of technology itself. You see, the very ground underneath the throne is shifting. The old world of traditional virtual machines, where VMware was king, is giving way to new models. First came hyper-converged systems, like the ones from Nutanix, which made everything simpler. And now the next huge wave is containers and Kubernetes, a totally new way to run apps that often doesn't even need a classic VM at all. This disruption was happening long before Broadcom even entered the picture. All right, let's boil this whole saga down. What should you take away from this? First, the long, long era of one company completely owning this critical market is over. Second, cost, spurred on by Broadcom's big changes, has become a massive reason for people to change. Third, the future isn't one size fits all anymore. It's going to be a messy but exciting mix of different technologies. And finally, and this is the good news, more competition means more choices for all the businesses building the future of IT. Which leaves us with one last big thought. This battle for the virtualization throne, it isn't just about replacing a king, it's about what comes next. When the very foundation of a kingdom shifts, the real question isn't just who's going to rule, but what new castles, new cities, and new empires are going to get built on that new ground.